Shalom, I'm Tamar. Welcome to Torah Talk with Tamar. On today's episode, I want to discuss whether or not the concept of boyfriend and girlfriend is compatible with the ideals of the Hebrew Bible. Hi, I'm Tamar. I'm a scholar of the Hebrew Bible, a writer, and a homeschooling, homesteading, home birthing, Torah keeping, widowed mother of 7. Together, we live in the southern Appalachian, Southwest Virginia region of the United States, where I keep sheep, grow crops, and cook our meals from scratch, together with my 5 boys and 2 girls. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to do this subject because it's been fresh on my mind. My late husband passed away 3 years ago. It's been 3 years now. And I have started thinking seriously about remarriage recently. So I've been on dating apps. Yes, those highly debated and contentious dating apps. So this topic has been on my mind, but I also think this is a topic that has a lot of relevance in today's culture. I also think the Torah has an answer for every modern dilemma that we have, including this one. So, a lot of times in our American culture, and also this is universally true around the world, there is a progressive flow of dating that leads to boyfriend-girlfriend, that leads to engagement, that leads to marriage. But we have to ask ourselves, is this truly in line with the Creator's ways? And we ask ourselves this because we all want to be happy, don't we? And we want to find happiness. The Torah promises that if we follow the ancient path's ways, we will do what's best for ourselves and we will find that happiness. So why are there so many pitfalls in the dating process when people begin to call themselves boyfriend and girlfriend? A lot of times it's assumed that being a boyfriend or girlfriend suddenly imbues that person with rights that are mostly reserved in the Torah for husband and wife and a bit for engaged people as well. Should you give somebody husband privileges if they're your boyfriend? And should you be giving somebody wife privileges if they are your girlfriend? And I believe the answer to that question is no. There should be strong boundaries between people unless they have hit the engagement phase. How long exactly is that process between meeting somebody and becoming engaged? A lot of times our culture treats women as though our performance as girlfriends should prove us worthy of being given a ring or being engaged. But is that exactly what the Hebrew Bible says? So naturally in Genesis 2:24, we get an admonition that men and women should cleave together. One man, one woman, and the intent is to cleave to the person of the opposite sex, the opposite gender. What does that process look like, though, in the Hebrew Bible when we're all trying to get to that process or through that process to the point of finding somebody that our soul feels at peace with and that we can cleave to? Well, I think there are 3 stories in the Hebrew Bible that really share this perspective of truth and highlight exactly whether or not boyfriend-girlfriend concept is healthy for us and if it's even biblical. And of course, by Bible, I mean the Hebrew Bible. So first is the story of Rebecca. And I think there's a very interesting verse here in Genesis 24:16. It says that Rebecca was a Betula, a virgin, but it also clarifies that neither had any man known her. And the Hebrew word there used is yada. And interestingly, that verb is used to talk about intimate relations between men and women when they conceive children throughout the Hebrew Bible. But the narrator, the writer, the author goes to clarify that neither had any man yada her. And this verb is also used in the context of mental knowledge or understanding throughout the Hebrew Bible as well. For example, when it says, knowledge of Yah. The same verb is used there, yada. So this goes to clarify that Rebecca had never drawn near to a man to become intimately attached emotionally or mentally. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in this verse in Torah, because if you continue through the boyfriend and girlfriend process and you become emotionally and mentally attached to somebody, but that man has no intention of marrying you, you get yourself into a bind, into a trap and a pitfall. The Hebrew ancient Israelite men were very intentional when they approached women. When Abraham sent his servants to fetch Rebekah for his son, the process was very intentional. In fact, there was no dating, because in the ancient world, they had a timeless process of arranged marriage, which can still actually work today, but I want to talk about more of that in a minute. I want to focus on the fact first that this was very intentional. There was no mystery or ambiguity about the reason the servant was approaching Rebekah. He told her from the beginning, I'm approaching you to seek you out as a wife for my master's son. There was the intent. It was stated very clearly. And it's true to the human experience that in relationships where the man makes it his intent very quickly to say, I'm in pursuit of a wife. I'm going to pursue you in hopes that this works out. There was no lollygagging or putting the woman through months and years of ambiguity and making her perform and measure up to some ideal to show that she's worthy of a ring. It wasn't like that. Her character was assessed because of her relation to them. They knew of Rebekah from the get because they were from distant bloodline, which was common for the Hebrew ancient Israelites because the community was small. They married down the bloodline, cousins or farther, and he gave her gifts from the beginning. So, biblically speaking, the man is taking a chance on this woman and in hopes that it works out for the best, knowing two things up front: that she's a woman of good character, and two, that she serves the same creator and she's a woman of faith. And this process, again, is demonstrated with Ruth, the widow. When Ruth went into pick barley and wheat, as was the custom for widows and people who were poor, they were allowed to glean the fields. Boaz took notice of her, and immediately he gives her protection and praise. He invested in her first, and he took note of her. So, again, it's a male-led process. The pursuit in the Hebrew Bible way is male-led. It's very dangerous for a woman to pursue a man, and it's just not biblical at all. Dangerous for a few reasons, which we can get into later. But in kind, Ruth begins to reciprocate his interests, and she lays at his feet to show that she would like for him to be her kinsman redeemer. In response to that, he stands up to pay a bride price for Ruth, and he makes the gesture to show his interest in a long-term relationship. And this is, again, within a short duration of time. There was no months and years of dating and her performing to prove she's worthy. Her worthiness came from the fact that she was a woman of faith and a woman of good character. And in the ancient Hebrew Israelite culture, the threshold for divorce was very high. So this sort of arranged marriage process still worked because you accepted a person and worked through the marriage with them. You weren't permitted to discard somebody just because they were annoying or had bad habits, or you didn't like some feature about them that you discovered later. And am I saying that you should just randomly marry somebody that you meet on the internet? No way. You should definitely scan people for major red flags, like do they have a past history of being a sex offender, grand larceny, some kind of thing that is going to be prohibitive of you cleaving to them. Okay, so if you know the person is a person of good character and a person of faith, there's a high likely chance that this arranged marriage is going to succeed. And most of the time in the ancient Hebrew Israelite culture, they did not divorce for whimsical reasons. And this is why men put that earnest gift towards the woman and she reciprocates in kind. The only kind of separation in ancient Hebrew culture was usually because of death. In Deuteronomy 24, it does talk about a man giving a woman a get and sending her away. But again, this is not prescriptive. It starts with an if statement. And this is not the Creator encouraging it, it's the Creator regulating it for the protection of the community and the protection of the women. Let's also look at the story of David and Abigail. When Abigail was widowed, he sent messengers to fetch her and say, hey, I'd like to take you as my wife. Will you come with me? And she consents. All these stories, of course, with these women were consensual. With Rebecca, with Ruth, with Abigail, none of these women were forced into a marriage or forced into an arranged marriage situation. They knew these men were men of the community who had good reputations and who were serving the Creator. And likewise, the women put their trust in those men to be good husbands because of their devotion to the Most High. So you can see through these stories, there really is no concept laid out of boyfriend and girlfriend. It was the man showing his intent, being very intentional in his approach. There was no long dating period. The woman didn't have to be a performative girlfriend to try to earn a ring. It's actually the other way around in the Hebrew Bible. The men chose the women, and they chose to love the women first, and then the women reciprocated. Of course, people could bring up, what about the fact that there were concubines? But again, concubinage is a violation of Genesis 2:24. The man and the women are failing to cleave together. And, there's also male concubines in the Hebrew Bible described in Ezekiel 23. The women were using these men for sexual gratification. They were lusting after the men with no real intent of cleaving to the men. And this again violates the principle of Genesis 2:24, that women should seek out men to cleave to them, and vice versa. Men should be seeking out women intentionally to cleave to them. Let's also address the concepts of master and Baal in the Torah. There are instances in which women call their husbands master or their husbands Baal. But these, again, are regulated to regulate abnormalities in human behavior. This was not the spiritual ideal of Genesis 2:24 of a husband and a wife, Ish and Isha, to cleave together. So to say that just because something occurred in the Hebrew Bible doesn't necessarily mean it's the ideal that we should follow, because there's definitely instructions in the Torah for regulating abnormal human psychology. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, there was a very intentional, fast-paced process in which men approach women with earnest intent, bestow on them a gift, including a bride price, and make their intentions known very quickly. The men chose to love the women first, and this is also mirrored in the Creator choosing Israel first. The Creator chose to love Israel, and Israel responds in kind because women are responders. Women are designed to be responders and choose to love back the men that choose them first. This is the natural process of the Hebrew Bible. It's unnatural and outside of the order of design for a woman to pursue a man and to choose him. It's also unnatural for a man and a woman to be boyfriend and girlfriend. This is like a half cleaving. It's also outside of the design of the Creator for a woman to give wife benefits to a man who has no intention of a long-term relationship with her. And this is what the girlfriend-boyfriend situation does to people. It is like a pretend marriage. You're forming an emotional attachment. You're forming a mental attachment. You're getting to know someone, yada them, without ever having the formality and structure of a cleaving situation, a marriage covenant. And this is very dangerous, because if you're not going to give somebody the vow and the intention of working through a relationship long term together, you're treading on dangerous ground to form an emotional, mental, or physical attachment to them, knowing that the whole structure should collapse. And someone could argue, well, that could happen to a marriage, but no, it's not supposed to. In the ancient Hebrew Israelite culture, there was no divorce. The intent of the marriage was for life. It was only under conditions of adultery or idolatry that people were separated, and this was caused by death. So this idea that you could just discard somebody for frivolous reasons did not exist in the ancient world. This is why they took the risk of arranged marriage. If you discover that your partner has some character flaw, bad habit, or annoyance, you still love them. You still work through it. Your connection as husband and wife was to sharpen each other, become spiritually stronger. And this was a lot of times put upon the woman, but not in a bad way. It's a lot of more the woman's role. Women are created with banah, a spiritual ability to see things spiritually in a way that men can't. So women were seen as a divine spiritual rescuer, and that is what Etzer Connecto means, of course, right? And this is why the men took high risks in choosing a woman of faith. They took the risk because they knew that the prophet was Profit, that the profit they would reap in having a spiritual woman was like gold in their life. Of course, in the ancient texts, it talks about the wayward, wicked women, but it elevates very highly women of faith who had spiritual understanding, because that was like having gold in the man's life. There wasn't this fear and phobia of women of good character back in the ancient world. They were happy to have those women. They rejoiced over those women entering their life. And any man who's not going to rejoice upon meeting you, upon your presence being there, is not following the biblical order of events for two people cleaving. It says that he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Jacob lifted up his voice with joy when he saw Rachel, when he had Rachel in his presence. The presence of a good woman is one of the greatest things a man could ever find. So there should be no lagging in the process. There should be no dragging his feet. A good man would follow the natural order of events laid out in the Hebrew Bible. Make his intention known very quickly that he is using your time because he's looking for a wife. Of course, there's a scanning time looking for compatibility and chemistry and whether or not the physical attraction is there. But that can be done in a relatively short time and safely. This concept that a woman should give days and months and years of her life wondering and waiting, will he pop the question, is simply not biblical. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your youth. It's a waste of your fertility. And honestly, it can be very destructive emotionally to women to always wonder what a guy's intention is. The Torah promises that if we follow these ancient paths, we will find the greatest happiness in our lives. And I believe that. So many people have seen that true, that when they follow the commands of the Creator, that they find the greatest happiness in their life. Following the process of man and woman relationships from the Hebrew Bible will make us the happiest. This drudgery and process of boyfriend and girlfriend is not going to bring us the greatest happiness. And so I encourage you to stay true to the ancient path's roots. I hope that this discussion has helped you to meditate and understand and seek out truth in the Hebrew Bible. It's an ancient text with modern relevance. Thank you for joining me on another chat of Torah Talk with Tamar. Tune in for more episodes. Shalom.